When broke single mother Clara Hayes accidentally texted a billionaire at 2:47 a.m. begging for baby formula money, she never imagined it would expose a massive corporate conspiracy, put her life in danger, and change everything she thought she knew about love and destiny. One wrong digit, $5,000, and a mystery that would either save them both or destroy everything they'd ever cared about. The electricity had been cut off for 3 days. Clara Hayes sat in the suffocating darkness of her studio apartment, her 6-month-old son Ethan's desperate cries piercing through the humid Chicago night like shards of glass. The baby's wails echoed off the peeling walls, each one a knife twisting deeper into her already shattered heart. She pressed her back against the cold kitchen cabinet, clutching her dying phone with trembling fingers, watching the battery percentage drop to a terrifying 8%. "Please, baby, please," she whispered, her voice cracking as she rocked Ethan against her chest. His tiny fists beat weakly against her threadbare t-shirt, his face red and contorted with hunger she couldn't satisfy. Mommy's trying so hard." The empty formula can sat mockingly on the counter had been empty for 18 hours now. She'd scraped together every coin, checked every pocket, even searched the couch cushions for loose change, but came up with only $7.23, not nearly enough for the $34 can of formula that might as well have cost $1,000 for all the good her $7 would do. Outside, the city hummed with life she couldn't afford to be part of. Traffic lights painted the grimy window in alternating reds and greens, casting ghostly shadows across the cramped space she'd been calling home since David left. Since he had decided that being a father was too much responsibility, and disappeared into the night with another woman leaving behind only empty promises and a baby who deserved so much better than this. Clara's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten in over a day, saving her last few dollars for Ethan's needs. The irony wasn't lost on her, a woman with a biochemistry degree from Northwestern, reduced to rationing crackers and tap water while her baby starved. The student loans that had promised a better future now felt like chains around her neck, the monthly payments another impossible burden in an endless list of things she couldn't afford. She fumbled for her phone, squinting at the cracked screen. 2:47 a.m. Her thumb hovered over her brother Marcus's contact information. She'd already called twice this week, once for rent money she still hadn't fully paid back, once for groceries when the food stamps ran out early. Her pride had already been thoroughly stomped into the ground, but asking again felt like diving even deeper into the abyss of her own failure. But Ethan's cries grew more desperate, more heartbreaking, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she whispered to the darkness as she began typing. "I'm so sorry." Her fingers, slick with nervous sweat and shaking from exhaustion, moved across the screen. "Marcus, I know I just asked, but Ethan needs formula and I'm completely broke. Could you please send $50? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my next freelance check, I promise. I'm desperate." She hit send before she could lose her nerve, then immediately felt the crushing weight of shame wash over her. At 26, she was supposed to have her life together. She was supposed to be the success story, the first in her family to graduate college, the one who'd made it out of the cycle of poverty that had trapped her parents and grandparents. Instead, she was texting her younger brother for baby formula money at nearly 3 a.m. Ethan's cries reached a new pitch of desperation, and Clara felt something break inside her chest. She stood up on unsteady legs, pacing the small space and bouncing him gently, humming a lullaby her own mother used to sing. But even that memory was tainted now. Her mother, who died when Clara was 19, would be devastated to see her daughter's life falling apart like this. "I'm failing you," she whispered against Ethan's soft hair. "I'm failing you so badly, baby boy." Her phone buzzed. Clara's heart leaped. Marcus must have seen her message. But when she looked at the screen, confusion replaced hope. "Who is this?" The response came from Marcus's number, but something felt off. She double-checked the contact, her tired brain struggling to process what she was seeing. The number was right. Wasn't it? With growing dread, she scrolled up to look at her sent message, and her blood turned to ice. The last digit was wrong. Instead of her brother's familiar number ending in 7, she'd sent her desperate plea to a number ending in 4. A complete stranger had just received her most vulnerable moment, her deepest shame, her desperate begging for help. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." She breathed, her face burning with humiliation even in the empty apartment. She quickly typed back, "I'm so sorry, wrong number, please disregard." But before she could hit send, another message appeared on her screen. "Clara." Her finger froze over the send button. The stranger had somehow known her name, but she hadn't mentioned it in her original message. Her heart began racing for an entirely different reason now. How could a random person know who she was? Another message. "Is Ethan okay?" Clara's phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. The sound startled Ethan, who began crying even harder. She stared at the device as if it had turned into a snake, her mind reeling. Not only did this stranger know her name, but they knew her son's name too. In her original message, she'd only mentioned needing formula for her baby. She hadn't said Ethan anywhere. With trembling hands, she picked up the phone and typed, "Who are you? How do you know our names?" The response came immediately. "A friend. Is he hungry right now? I don't understand. I've never met you. How do you—" "Clara, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Is Ethan crying because he needs formula?" Something in the directness of the question, the urgency without panic, made her answer honestly. "Yes, he hasn't eaten since this morning. I don't have money for formula." What happened next would haunt her for months afterward, would make her question everything she thought she knew about coincidence, fate, and the way the universe worked. Her phone buzzed with a notification that made her heart stop. Bank alert, $5,000 or dollars deposited to checking account. Available immediately. Clara stared at the screen, certain she was hallucinating from exhaustion and stress. $5,000. In her account. Right now. She blinked, hard rubbed her eyes, looked again. The number didn't change. Her phone rang and Marcus's name, no, the stranger's number that she'd thought was Marcus, appeared on the screen. "Hello?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Clara." The voice was deep, warm, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Definitely not Marcus. "Did you get the transfer?" How did you... Who are you?" "My name is Adrian. And right now the only thing that matters is getting Ethan fed. There's a 24-hour CVS on Halsted Street about 6 blocks from your apartment. They have the Similac Pro Advance formula, the gentle kind that's easier on sensitive stomachs." Clara's mind reeled. "How do you know where I live? How do you know what kind of formula?" "Clara," his voice was gentle but firm, "your baby is hungry. We can talk about everything else after he's taken care of. Can you get to the store?" She looked down at Ethan, whose cries had softened to exhausted whimpers. The fight was going out of him, which was somehow even more terrifying than the crying. I don't have a car, and it's almost 3 a.m. There's an Uber already on its way to your building. Driver's name is Kevin, blue Honda Civic. He's been paid for the round trip and has instructions to wait while you shop." As if summoned by his words, Clara's phone buzzed with an Uber notification. A blue Honda Civic driver, Kevin, arriving in 2 minutes. "This is insane," she breathed. "People don't just... This doesn't happen. Strangers don't send money to wrong numbers. They don't know things about babies and stores and..." "Clara," Adrian's voice was patient, understanding. "I know this is overwhelming. I know it doesn't make sense, but your son needs you to accept this help right now. Can you do that? Can you put on shoes and go feed your baby?" The practical question cut through her spiraling thoughts. Ethan made a small, pitiful sound against her chest, and maternal instinct overrode everything else. Her baby was hungry. A stranger had given her the means to fix that. Everything else could wait. "Yes," she said, already moving toward the closet where she kept her single pair of decent shoes. "Yes, I can do that." "Good. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until you're safely back home, okay?" "You don't have to. I want to." The simple statement, spoken with such quiet conviction, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. When was the last time someone had wanted to take care of her, to make sure she was safe? The Uber arrived exactly when Adrian had said it would. Kevin was a middle-aged man with kind eyes who looked completely unfazed by the unusual circumstances, as if wealthy strangers regularly paid him to drive desperate mothers to buy baby formula at 3 a.m. "You're Clara?" he asked gently, and when she nodded, he smiled. "Let's get that little one taken care of." The CVS was almost empty, except for a tired-looking cashier and a security guard who barely looked up from his magazine. Clara felt surreal walking through the brightly lit aisles while holding her phone, Adrian's presence a constant reassuring voice in her ear. "The formula's in aisle 7, he said as if he'd made this trip himself 100 times. "How do you know that?" I called ahead and asked. Of course he had. Nothing about this night made sense, so why should that detail be any different? Clara grabbed 3 cans of the exact formula Adrian had mentioned, plus diapers, baby wipes, and after a moment's hesitation, a few groceries for herself. Bread, peanut butter, milk, apples. Basic things she hadn't been able to afford in weeks. "Adrian," she said, as she stood in the checkout line, "this is too much. The money you sent, it's too much. I only needed $50. "Clara, when was the last time you ate a real meal?" The question caught her off guard. That's not important." "It is to me. When—" She closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. "Tuesday. I think. Maybe Monday." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched long enough that she wondered if they'd been disconnected. Then, very quietly, Adrian said, "Buy whatever you need. Buy enough for a week, 2 weeks. I can't accept that much help from a stranger." "Then don't think of me as a stranger." The cashier, a young woman with purple hair and tired eyes, smiled sympathetically as she rang up Clara's items. "New baby?" she asked, nodding toward Ethan, who had finally stopped crying and was looking around with wide, curious eyes. 6 months, Clara said. "It's been a difficult night." "They all are at that age," the cashier said kindly. "But it gets easier, I promise." The total came to $89.43. Clara paid with her debit card, still hardly believing the money was real, still expecting the transaction to be declined. But it went through smoothly, and soon she was back in Kevin's car with bags full of everything she needed to take care of her son. "Thank you," she said into the phone as they drove through the empty streets back to her building. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "You don't need to thank me, Clara." "I do, though. You saved us tonight. You literally saved my baby's life." Another long pause. Then so quietly, she almost missed it. "Maybe you saved mine too." Back in her apartment, Clara prepared Ethan's bottle with shaking hands. The baby took it eagerly, his small hands reaching up to help hold it, his eyes fluttering with relief and satisfaction. The sound of him drinking was the most beautiful thing she'd ever heard. "Is he eating?" Adrian asked, still on the phone. "Yes." Tears ran freely down her cheeks now. "Yes, he's eating. He's okay. He's going to be okay. And you, are you going to eat something too?" Clara realized she was exhausted in a way that went bone deep, but also that the crushing weight of desperation had lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in months, she could breathe without feeling like she was drowning. "I will," she promised, "after he's finished. Clara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Something in his tone made her pay closer attention. "Okay. Are you safe where you are? Your apartment, your building? Do you feel secure there?" She looked around the dingy studio with its peeling paint and broken air conditioner, and the suspicious stain on the ceiling that had been growing larger each week. "It's not great," she admitted, "but it's what I can afford. Well, it's what I could afford before I fell behind on rent." "How far behind?" The question should have felt invasive, but somehow it didn't. Adrian had already seen her at her most vulnerable, had already rescued her from her lowest point. What was the point of pride now? 2 months. Almost 3. "Mrs. Chen, my landlord, she's been patient, but she can't wait much longer. She has bills too." "What would it take to get current, to give you some breathing room?" "Adrian, you've already done too much. I can't ask for... You're not asking. I'm offering. What would it take? Clara did quick math in her head. $2,800 for the back rent, plus next month's rent, plus the late fees. Maybe $3,500 total. Consider it done. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. No, I can't let you do that. Tonight was an emergency, but this is my life. My responsibility. I have to figure it out myself. Why? The simple question threw her. Because that's how the world works. You don't just accept thousands of dollars from strangers. You don't let random people solve all your problems. What if I told you I wasn't random? Clara's breath caught. What do you mean? What if I told you that sometimes the universe puts people exactly where they need to be, exactly when they need to be there? What if I told you that your wrong number wasn't wrong at all? It was exactly right. Ethan had finished his bottle and was now looking around with alert, satisfied eyes. Clara shifted him to her shoulder, patting his back gently. I'd say that sounds like something someone says in movies, not something that happens in real life. Adrian's laugh was warm, rich, and completely unexpected. Fair enough. Can I tell you something true instead? Please. 3 hours ago, I was standing on the balcony of my office, 60 floors above downtown Chicago, seriously considering whether I wanted to be alive tomorrow morning. Clara's blood went cold. Adrian. I'm okay, he said quickly. I'm more than okay now. But I need you to understand when your text came through when I read about your baby crying, and your desperation, and your need for help. It reminded me that there are things in this world worth saving. People worth saving. Problems that can actually be solved with action instead of just existing. She didn't know what to say to that. The idea that her moment of humiliation, her desperate plea for help, had somehow saved someone else's life felt too big to process. I don't understand, she whispered. You don't have to understand it all tonight, Adrian said gently. But Clara, I need you to let me help you. Not because you owe me anything, not because I pity you, but because I think we were supposed to find each other tonight. I think your son was supposed to cry at exactly 2:47 a.m., and you were supposed to type exactly the wrong number, and I was supposed to be standing in exactly the right place to receive your message. People don't just appear in your life like that. Don't they? His voice was soft, thoughtful. Haven't you ever had a moment where everything changed, where the whole trajectory of your life shifted because of one conversation, one decision, one perfectly timed accident? Clara thought about David leaving, about losing her job, about the series of small disasters that had led her to this moment. But she also thought about holding Ethan for the first time, about the fierce love that had crashed over her like a wave and changed everything she thought she knew about herself. Maybe, she admitted. I'm going to send you my real name, Adrian said, and I want you to look me up. Google me, read about me, make sure I'm not some kind of dangerous person. And then, if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to meet you tomorrow. Somewhere public, somewhere safe. I'd like to look you in the eye and explain why I think tonight happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Clara's phone buzzed with a text, Adrian Cole. She nearly dropped Ethan. Even she, isolated as she'd been by poverty and exhaustion, knew that name. Adrian Cole was the CEO of Cole Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. His face had been on the cover of Forbes magazine. He was worth more money than she could comprehend, the kind of person who existed in a completely different universe from her small, struggling world. She started, then stopped, her mind reeling. I'm just a person who was having the worst night of his life until a wrong text message reminded him that some problems can actually be fixed, Adrian said quietly. I'm someone who wants to help if you'll let me. Ethan was getting drowsy in her arms, his eyelids fluttering as the formula did its work. For the first time in days, he looked peaceful, content, safe. And for the first time in months, Clara felt something she'd almost forgotten existed: hope. Okay, she said so quietly, she wasn't sure he heard her. Okay. Tomorrow, somewhere public. But Adrian, I need you to know that I'm not looking for a fairy tale. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. I'm just I'm just a mom trying to take care of her baby. That's all I am." "Clara," Adrian said, and something in his voice made her chest tighten. "That's everything." After they hung up, Clara sat in her dark apartment, holding her sleeping son, staring at her phone screen. The bank alert was still there, $5,000, real money in her real account. On the counter sat bags of groceries and formula and diapers, tangible proof that the last hour hadn't been some desperate hallucination. She Googled Adrian Cole and spent the next hour reading about his life, his company, his reputation. Everything she found was impressive and intimidating, and completely at odds with the gentle, patient voice that had talked her through the longest night of her life. As dawn began to creep through her grimy windows, painting the apartment in soft grays and golds, Clara made a decision that would change everything. She would meet Adrian Cole. She would listen to what he had to say. And maybe, just maybe, she would let herself believe that sometimes wrong numbers were actually exactly right. Ethan slept peacefully in her arms, his tiny chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of a baby who knew he was safe, loved, and fed. And for the first time since David had walked out, Clara allowed herself to hope that their story might not be over. It might just be beginning. Outside Chicago was waking up to a new day, and Clara Hayes, biochemist, single mother survivor, was about to discover that some accidents were actually destiny in disguise. Clara woke to sunlight streaming through her apartment window for the first time in weeks. For a moment, she forgot where she was, why she felt different. Then she saw Ethan sleeping peacefully in his crib, actually sleeping instead of crying from hunger, and the events of the night came rushing back like a dream that had somehow become reality. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from Marcus, along with increasingly frantic text messages. "Clara, what the hell? Someone's been trying to reach you through my number. Are you okay? Call me back now." She dialed him quickly, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't wake Ethan. "Jesus Christ, Clara, I've been worried sick." Marcus's voice was tight with anxiety. "Some guy called me at 4 in the morning asking if I was your brother, said he needed to verify something about a money transfer. I thought you'd been kidnapped or scammed or—" "I'm okay," Clara interrupted gently. "Better than okay, actually. It's complicated, but Marcus, someone helped us last night. Really helped us." "Helped how, Clara? Please tell me you didn't do anything dangerous. You didn't meet some stranger off the internet or—" "No, nothing like that." Clara walked to her kitchen, staring at the bags of groceries that proved the previous night hadn't been a hallucination. "I accidentally texted the wrong number when I was trying to reach you. And the person who got the message, he sent money. For formula. For food." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Clara checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "How much money?" Marcus finally asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Enough. More than enough." "Clara, this sounds like a scam. Rich guys don't just send money to random women. There's always a catch, always something they want in return." The cynicism in his voice stung because it echoed her own fears, the voice in her head that insisted nothing this good could possibly be real. "I know how it sounds, but Marcus, he knew things. He knew Ethan's name. He knew what kind of formula to buy. And when I looked him up—" She took a deep breath. "It's Adrian Cole." "Adrian Cole, like the billionaire Adrian Cole. The guy who's always on the business channels. That's the one." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Clara, what the hell have you gotten yourself into?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Her heart rate spiked. Somehow she knew it was him. "Marcus, I have to go. Someone's calling." "Clara, wait." She switched over to the other call, her hand trembling slightly. "Hello." "Good morning." Adrian's voice was exactly as she remembered, warm, steady, with that hint of an accent that seemed more pronounced in the daylight. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little. Did you—" "No." The honesty in his admission surprised her. "I kept thinking about our conversation, about you and Ethan. How are you feeling this morning?" Clara looked around her apartment, which somehow seemed brighter, more hopeful than it had in months. Confused, grateful, scared, all at the same time. That's understandable. Clara, I know this situation is unusual. I know you have every reason to be cautious. Did you have a chance to research me? I did. She'd spent hours reading everything she could find about Adrian Cole, and what she'd discovered had only deepened her confusion. He was 34, had built his company from nothing, was known for his philanthropy and innovation. But the articles all described him as intensely private, almost reclusive. The idea that this man had spent hours on the phone with a stranger didn't align with anything she'd read. And what did you think? I think you're either exactly who you say you are, or you're the most elaborate con artist in history. His laugh was rich and genuine. I prefer to think I'm exactly who I say I am. Clara, are you free this afternoon? I'd like to meet you properly. There's a cafe called Brew Haven on Oak Street. Do you know it? She did know it. It was in a safe, busy part of town, the kind of place where women met online dates for the first time. Public, well lit, with plenty of witnesses. I know it. Would 2 o'clock work for you? I can arrange a car if you need transportation. No car, Clara said quickly. I'll take the bus. And Adrian, I'm bringing Ethan. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. After they hung up, Clara stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror and tried to process what she was about to do. She was meeting Adrian Cole. The Adrian Cole. A man worth hundreds of millions of dollars wanted to have coffee with her, a broke single mother who lived in a studio apartment with peeling paint and a growing ceiling stain. She chose her outfit carefully, the one dress she owned that wasn't stained or wrinkled, a simple navy blue sheath that she'd worn to job interviews back when she could still afford professional clothes. It was a little loose now, weight loss from too many skipped meals, but it was clean and respectable. Ethan seemed to sense her nervous energy. He was alert and curious as she packed his diaper bag, checking and double-checking that she had everything she needed. Formula diapers, wipes, a change of clothes, his favorite stuffed elephant. The simple luxury of having enough supplies felt almost decadent. The bus ride to Oak Street gave her too much time to think, to second-guess her decision. What if this was all some elaborate hoax? What if Adrian Cole was nothing like the man she'd spoken to on the phone? What if he expected something from her that she wasn't prepared to give? But then she remembered his voice in the darkness, patient and kind, staying on the phone while she fed her hungry baby. She remembered the way he'd said, "Maybe you saved mine too," when she thanked him for saving their lives. Whatever his motivations, he had helped them when they desperately needed it. The least she could do was hear him out. Brew Haven was exactly as she remembered, busy but not crowded, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light. Clara arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table near the back where she could see the entire cafe, but still have some privacy for their conversation. She recognized him the moment he walked through the door. The photos she'd seen online hadn't done him justice. Adrian Cole was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, and sharp green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He was wearing dark jeans and a simple gray sweater. But something about the way he carried himself made it clear that this was not an ordinary man. He spotted her immediately and walked over with a slight smile that transformed his entire face from intimidating to approachable. "Clara," he said her name like he'd been practicing it. "Thank you for coming." She stood to shake his hand, and the moment their skin touched, she felt an electric jolt that had nothing to do with static electricity. His hand was warm, strong, with calluses that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk all day. "Thank you for..." She gestured vaguely, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for caring about a stranger. Thank you for making me believe in miracles again." "Can I get you something to drink?" Adrian asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Food you should eat." The gentle command reminded her of their phone conversation, the way he'd insisted she'd take care of herself. "Coffee would be great. Black." "When was the last time you ate?" The question was direct, but not accusatory. "This morning. I made eggs." It was true she'd used some of the groceries he'd paid for to make herself breakfast for the first time in days. Something in his expression relaxed. Good. He returned a few minutes later with 2 coffees and a plate of pastries. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a variety. Clara looked at the expensive-looking croissants and muffins and felt that familiar surge of shame. Adrian, you can't keep buying things for me. Last night was already too much. It wasn't too much. He settled back in his chair, his green eyes serious. Clara, I need to tell you something and I need you to listen to the whole thing before you respond, okay? She nodded, though her heart was beating fast. Last night when you texted me, I was having the worst day of my professional life. My company is being investigated for financial irregularities that I didn't know about my CFO. Someone I trusted completely has been stealing from us for months, and I was facing the very real possibility of losing everything I've built. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, but she could see the strain around his eyes. I've been working 18-hour days, trying to fix things, trying to save jobs for 800 employees who depend on me, and I wasn't succeeding. Clara felt her chest tighten. I'm sorry, that sounds terrifying. It is. But Clara, when your message came through, when I read about your baby crying and your desperation, it was like someone had thrown me a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, I had a problem I could actually solve, a crisis I could handle. It reminded me that not everything is impossible. So, helping us was, what, therapy for you? Adrian leaned forward, his expression intense. Helping you was the first thing that made sense to me in months. Clara, do you believe in fate? I believe in coincidence. What if I told you that the phone number you texted my phone number, it's not listed anywhere? It's not public information. The only people who have it are my closest friends and family members. There are maybe 12 people in the world who could have given you that number. Clara's blood went cold. That's impossible. I must have misdialed Marcus's number. What's your brother's number? She recited it automatically, and Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. His number was identical except for the last digit, but it wasn't off by 1 number. The difference was 3 digits. That's not a misdial, Clara. That's not a typo. That's something else entirely. She stared at the numbers, her mind reeling. I don't understand. How could I have... I don't understand it either. But I know that you texted me at exactly the moment when I needed to remember that there are still good things in the world worth fighting for. And you needed help at exactly the moment when I needed to feel useful again. Ethan chose that moment to wake up making soft, cooing sounds from his car seat. Clara reached for him automatically, but Adrian was faster. May I? He asked, and something in his voice made her nod. She watched in amazement as Adrian lifted Ethan with practiced ease, supporting his head properly, settling him against his chest like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Ethan, who was usually fussy with strangers, looked up at Adrian with wide, curious eyes and made a happy gurgling sound. Hello, little man, Adrian said softly, his entire demeanor transforming as he looked down at the baby. You gave your mama quite a scare last night, didn't you? You're good with babies, Clara observed, trying to keep the surprise out of her voice. I have a lot of godchildren. My business partner has 4 kids, and he's always foisting them off on me when he needs a babysitter. Adrian's smile was warm as he looked down at Ethan. But I've never held one who's quite this important. Important? The baby who brought us together. His green eyes met hers over Ethan's head. Clara, I want to help you. Not just with money, though I can do that. I want to help you build a life. A real life, where you're not choosing between feeding your baby and paying rent. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you want to change a stranger's life? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, gently rocking Ethan, who seemed perfectly content in his arms. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, deliberate. Because I recognize something in you. The way you talked about Ethan last night, the way you'd sacrifice anything for him, that's real love. That's the kind of person worth investing in. He paused, then added more quietly, and because I've spent the last 5 years building a fortune, and I'm starting to realize that money doesn't mean anything if you don't have anyone to share it with. You could have anyone. You could date models, actresses, socialites, women who understand your world. I've tried that. His laugh was rueful. Trust me, I've tried. But those women, they see my bank account, not me. They want the lifestyle, the status, the security. None of them would text a stranger at 3 a.m. begging for baby formula money. Because none of them would need to. Exactly. Adrian's gaze was steady, serious. Clara, I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to rescue you because I think you're helpless. I'm trying to rescue you because you're strong enough to let me help without losing yourself in the process. The words hit her like a physical blow. She thought about David, who had left because responsibility was too hard. She thought about her parents who had loved her but never had the resources to help her achieve her dreams. She thought about all the people who had seen her struggle and looked away uncomfortable with her need. What exactly are you proposing? She asked quietly. I want to offer you a job. Clara blinked. A job? My company is hemorrhaging money because someone I trusted was embezzling funds and covering it up with false reports. I need someone with a scientific background, someone who understands data analysis and can spot inconsistencies, someone who's not connected to my existing team, who can look at everything with fresh eyes. Adrian shifted Ethan to his other arm. Your background is in biochemistry, right? You understand statistical analysis, data interpretation. Yes, but Adrian, corporate financial analysis is completely different from laboratory research. The principles are the same. Observe, hypothesize, test, conclude. And Clara, you'd be reporting directly to me. No one else would have authority over your work. You'd have complete access to our financial records, complete freedom to investigate wherever the evidence leads. She stared at him. You're offering me a job based on a text message and a 2-hour conversation. I'm offering you a job based on the fact that you've been surviving impossible circumstances through intelligence and determination. I'm offering you a job because you think like a scientist and you're not afraid of hard truths. His expression grew more serious. And because I trust you in a way that I haven't trusted anyone in a very long time. The salary. $90,000 to start, plus benefits, plus a signing bonus that would cover your back rent and give you enough to find a better apartment. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara felt the world tilt around her. $90,000. More money than she'd ever imagined making. Enough to give Ethan everything he needed, everything he deserved. Enough to stop choosing between rent and groceries, between electricity and baby formula. This is insane, she whispered. Is it? Or is it the first thing that's made sense in either of our lives for a very long time? Clara looked down at her hands, trying to process what he was offering. A job, yes, but also dignity, purpose. The chance to use her education for something meaningful. And underneath it all, the growing awareness that the man sitting across from her, the man holding her baby like he was something precious, was looking at her like she mattered, like she was worth investing in. There's something else, Adrian said quietly. The person who's been stealing from my company, Vincent Harmon, my CFO, he's dangerous. When he realizes what we're doing, when he understands that someone's getting close to exposing him, he's going to fight back. This job, it might put you at risk. What kind of risk? The kind where people try to discredit you, threaten you, maybe worse. Adrian's jaw tightened. Clara, I won't lie to you. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. This is about bringing down someone who's stolen millions of dollars and ruined lives to cover his tracks. If you take this job, you'll be stepping into a war. She thought about her life as it was the constant stress, the crushing poverty, the fear that she'd never be able to give Ethan the life he deserved. Then she thought about the alternative Adrian was offering. Dangerous, yes, but also meaningful, important, a chance to fight for something bigger than just survival. If I said yes, she said slowly, when would I start? Tomorrow, if you're ready. We'd get you set up with an office, a computer, access to everything you need. And Clara, he hesitated, then forged ahead. I'd want to make sure you and Ethan are safe. Better apartment, secure building, maybe even a bodyguard until we know how Vincent's going to react. A bodyguard, Adrian, that sounds necessary. His voice was firm. Clara, this man has already proven he's willing to steal millions of dollars. People like that don't usually draw the line at physical threats. She looked at Ethan, still content in Adrian's arms, oblivious to the adult conversation swirling around him. Her baby deserved better than the life she'd been able to give him so far. He deserved safety, security opportunities. And maybe, just maybe, he deserved to grow up seeing his mother as someone strong and capable, someone who fought for what was right. "I have one condition," she said finally. "Name it." "I want everything in writing. The job offer, the salary, the responsibilities. I want it official and legal and completely separate from whatever this is between us." She gestured to the space between them, to the electric tension she was trying to ignore. Adrian's smile was slow, appreciative. "You want to make sure I can't fire you if you decide you don't want to date me." Something like that. "Clara, I would never use your job as leverage in a personal relationship. Never. But you're absolutely right to want protection." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer right now. We'll have a contract drawn up today." As Adrian made the call, Clara sat back in her chair and tried to absorb what was happening. 24 hours ago, she'd been a desperate single mother with no prospects and no hope. Now she was being offered a job that would change her life by a man who looked at her like she was capable of changing his. "It's done," Adrian said, ending his call. "My lawyer will have the contract ready by 5 o'clock today. We can meet at my office to review it." "Your office?" Clara suddenly felt underdressed, unprepared. "Adrian, I can't just walk into a corporate building wearing a 3-year-old dress and carrying a diaper bag." "You can, and you will." His voice was gentle but firm. "Clara, you're about to become one of my most important employees. You don't need to apologize for having a baby or for not owning designer clothes. You need to get used to the fact that your intelligence and your integrity are worth more than any outfit." Ethan had fallen asleep against Adrian's chest, his tiny hand fisted in the soft fabric of the sweater. The sight of them together, this powerful, wealthy man cradling her baby, like he was something precious, made Clara's heart clench with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. "He likes you," she said softly. "The feeling is mutual." Adrian's voice was tender as he looked down at Ethan. "He's going to grow up to be extraordinary, Clara, just like his mother." The compliment sent warmth flooding through her chest, but also a spike of fear. She was starting to care about this man, starting to trust him, and that felt more dangerous than any financial conspiracy he'd warned her about. "Adrian," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I can't be. My focus has to be on Ethan, on building a stable life for both of us. I can't afford to get distracted by whatever this is." "I understand." His green eyes were serious, respectful. "Clara, I'm not asking you to make any decisions about us right now. I'm asking you to let me help you build that stable life you want. Everything else, we can figure out as we go. And if we can't figure it out, if this gets complicated, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Clara, I think you're underestimating yourself. I think you're stronger than you know and smarter than you give yourself credit for. I think you can handle a new job in a complicated situation with a man who's already half in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable, and completely unexpected. Clara felt her breath catch, felt her heart start racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Adrian, I know it's too soon to say that. I know it's crazy. But Clara, I've never met anyone like you. I've never wanted to protect someone and challenge them and learn from them all at the same time." He reached across the table with his free hand, his fingers barely brushing hers. "I'm not asking you to fall in love with me. I'm just asking you to let me earn the chance to try." Clara looked down at their almost touching hands, at her sleeping baby in his arms, at the coffee and pastries he'd bought, without thinking about the cost. She thought about the money in her bank account, about the job offer that would change everything, about the way he'd talked her through the darkest night of her life. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay, I'll take the job. Okay, I'll let you help us. And okay, maybe we can figure out the rest as we go." Adrian's smile was brilliant, transformative. "Clara Hayes, I think this is the beginning of something extraordinary." As they left the cafe together, Ethan still sleeping peacefully in Adrian's arms, Clara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Excitement about the future. She still didn't understand how a wrong text message had led to this moment, still couldn't quite believe that her life was about to change so dramatically. But as Adrian helped her into the back of his car, as he carefully transferred Ethan to his car seat, like the baby was made of spun glass, Clara began to think that maybe her brother Marcus was wrong. Maybe sometimes the universe did put people exactly where they needed to be, exactly when they needed to be there. And maybe, just maybe, some accidents were actually destiny in disguise. The Cole Technologies building rose 68 floors into the Chicago skyline, all gleaming glass and steel that caught the afternoon sunlight like a beacon. Clara pressed her face to the window of Adrian's car as they approached, feeling smaller and more out of place with each passing block. "It's intimidating, isn't it?" Adrian said, noticing her expression. He was driving himself, having dismissed his usual driver with a casual wave that spoke of a man accustomed to making his own rules. "I felt the same way the first time I walked in there. That was 8 years ago when it was just 12 floors in a dream." "You built all of this." Clara shifted Ethan in her arms, the baby having woken up during the ride and now gazing around with wide, curious eyes. "We built it. Every person who believed in the vision, who took a chance on an unknown company with big ideas." Adrian's voice carried a mixture of pride and something else, worry maybe, or fear. That's what makes this situation with Vincent so devastating. It's not just about the money he stole. It's about the trust he violated the people whose livelihoods he put at risk. They pulled into an underground garage, and Clara was surprised when Adrian parked in a regular spot rather than one marked for executives. Even more surprising was the way he came around to help her out of the car, taking Ethan's car seat and diaper bag without being asked. "You don't have to carry everything," Clara protested, but Adrian was already heading toward the elevator. "Clara, you're about to become one of the most important people in this building. The least I can do is carry your diaper bag." The elevator ride to the 57th floor was silent, except for Ethan's occasional babbling. Clara watched the numbers climb and tried to calm her racing heart. She was about to sign a contract that would change her life, about to step into a world she'd only seen in movies and magazines. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that took Clara's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. A young woman with perfectly styled hair and a warm smile stood up from behind an elegant desk. "Mr. Cole, your attorney is waiting in conference room A, and the contracts are ready for review." "Thank you, Sarah. This is Clara Hayes, our new senior financial analyst. Sarah runs this floor and probably knows more about my schedule than I do." Sarah's smile widened as she looked at Clara, and there was genuine warmth in her expression rather than the judgment Clara had been expecting. "Ms. Hayes, it's wonderful to meet you. And this must be Ethan." She leaned down to peer at the baby, who rewarded her with a gummy smile. "He's absolutely precious." "Thank you," Clara managed, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the casual acceptance the way these people seemed to take her presence in stride. "Conference room A is this way," Sarah said, leading them down a hallway lined with modern art. "Can I get you anything, coffee, water, something for the baby?" "We're fine, thank you." Adrian's hand found the small of Clara's back, a gentle, steadying touch that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. "Let's get this contract signed so Clara can start focusing on the real work." Conference room A was dominated by a massive mahogany table surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent. A distinguished man in an expensive suit stood up as they entered, his expression professional but kind. "Clara, this is Robert Chen, my attorney and one of my oldest friends. Robert, Clara Hayes." Robert shook her hand with a firm grip. "Ms. Hayes, I have to say I've never seen Adrian move this quickly on a hiring decision. He called me at 2 o'clock, demanding a contract be ready by 5. You must have made quite an impression." "I'm still not entirely sure what happened," Clara admitted, settling into one of the leather chairs while Adrian placed Ethan's car seat within easy reach. "What happened?" Robert said, spreading the contract out on the table, "is that you're about to become one of the highest paid analysts in the city, with more autonomy than most people get after 10 years in corporate finance." He looked at her over his reading glasses. I've been Adrian's lawyer for 15 years, and I've never seen him offer someone complete access to company financial records on their first day. Clara felt a flutter of nervousness. Maybe we should go through the contract carefully. For the next hour, Robert walked her through every clause, every provision, every protection the contract offered. The salary was even better than Adrian had mentioned, 90,000 plus performance bonuses that could bring it to over 6 figures. She would have her own office, her own assistant, and complete authority to investigate any financial irregularities she discovered. This clause here, Robert pointed to a section near the end, protects you from retaliation. Adrian cannot fire you for the content of your findings, regardless of what you discover or who might be implicated. Clara looked up at Adrian, who was bouncing Ethan gently on his knee. Even if I find something that reflects badly on you, especially then. Adrian's green eyes were serious. Clara, I need the truth, whatever it is. I can't fix problems I don't know about. She signed the contract with a hand that trembled only slightly, watching her name appear in careful script next to a salary that would change everything. When Robert countersigned as a witness, Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a sense of possibility she hadn't felt since before Ethan was born. "Welcome to Cole Technologies," Adrian said, and his smile was warm enough to light up the room. After Robert left, Adrian led Clara to what would be her office, a corner space with windows on 2 sides and furniture that looked like it had been ordered that afternoon, which she realized it probably had been. "Your computer should be set up by tomorrow morning," Adrian said, settling into the chair across from her desk while she explored the space. "It will have all your access codes ready, and I'll introduce you to the key people you'll be working with." "Adrian, this is..." Clara gestured at the office, at the view, at the impossibility of it all. "This is too much. 6 hours ago, I was a broke single mother. Now I have an office with a view of Lake Michigan. Now you have a chance to use your talents for something important." Adrian's voice was gentle, but firm. "Clara, you're not charity. You're not a rescue project. You're exactly what this company needs right now." Ethan chose that moment to start fussing, and Clara automatically reached for him, but Adrian was faster, scooping the baby up and walking to the window. "Look at that little man," he said softly, pointing out at the city spreading below them. "Your mama's going to have an office in this building. She's going to help catch the bad guys and make everything right again." The sight of them together, Adrian in his expensive sweater and perfect haircut, holding her baby like he was the most natural thing in the world, made Clara's chest tight with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. "He really does like you," she said quietly. "The feeling is definitely mutual." Adrian looked down at Ethan with an expression of such tenderness that Clara felt her heart skip. "Clara, can I ask you something personal? I think we're past the point of worrying about what's too personal. What happened with Ethan's father?" The question hit her like a physical blow, bringing back all the pain and humiliation she'd been trying to forget. "David left when Ethan was 2 months old. Said he wasn't ready to be a father, that it was all too much responsibility. He just left. He just left. Packed his things while I was at a doctor's appointment with Ethan, and when I came home, there was a note saying he needed to find himself, and that maybe someday he'd be ready to be the father Ethan deserved." Clara's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched in her lap. "That was 4 months ago. I haven't heard from him since." Adrian's jaw tightened, and for a moment, his expression was dangerous. What kind of man abandons his own child? The kind of man who sees a baby as a burden instead of a blessing. Clara took a shaky breath. The kind of man who runs when things get difficult instead of fighting to make them better. "Clara," Adrian's voice was soft, careful. "I need you to know something. I would never do that. I would never walk away from someone I cared about, especially not if they needed me. You don't know that. You don't know how you'd react if..." "I do know." His interruption was gentle but absolute. "Clara, I've been watching you for the past few hours. I've seen how you handle pressure, how you protect what matters to you, how you make impossible decisions with grace and intelligence. If I ever got the chance to be part of your life, really part of it, I would never take that for granted." The sincerity in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare, made Clara's throat tight with unshed tears. Adrian, I know it's too soon to talk about this. I know you have every reason to protect yourself, but Clara, I need you to understand what David did. That's not love. That's not what a real man does when the woman he cares about needs him. Before Clara could respond, there was a sharp knock on the office door. Adrian's expression immediately shifted from tender to alert, and he handed Ethan back to Clara with careful efficiency. "Come in," he called, his voice professional. The man who entered was tall, silver-haired, and expensively dressed with the kind of confident bearing that spoke of decades in corporate boardrooms. But there was something in his eyes, a calculating coldness, that made Clara instinctively pull Ethan closer. "Adrian, I heard you hired someone new today." The man's voice was smooth, pleasant, but Clara caught the undercurrent of displeasure, without running it through proper channels. "Vincent." Adrian's tone was carefully neutral, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. "I wasn't aware I needed approval to hire a financial analyst." So this was Vincent Harmon, the CFO Adrian suspected of embezzlement. Clara studied him carefully, noting the expensive watch, the perfectly manicured hands, the way his gaze swept over her like she was an interesting but ultimately unimportant puzzle piece. "Of course not," Vincent said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "I just like to be kept in the loop about new additions to the financial team, especially when they're given such extensive access to company records." "Ms. Hayes will be conducting routine audits," Adrian said evenly. "Nothing that should concern you unless you have something to hide." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Clara saw something flicker across Vincent's face, too quick to identify, but definitely not friendly. "Routine audits, of course." Vincent turned his attention to Clara, and she fought the urge to squirm under his scrutiny. "Ms. Hayes, is it? I don't believe we've met." "Vincent Harmon, Chief Financial Officer." "Clara Hayes." She managed to keep her voice steady as she shook his offered hand. "I'm looking forward to working here." "And what's your background, Ms. Hayes' previous experience in corporate finance?" Clara felt Adrian tense beside her, but she kept her expression calm. "Biochemistry degree from Northwestern, with extensive experience in data analysis and statistical interpretation." "Biochemistry?" Vincent's smile was patronizing. "How interesting. And you feel qualified to analyze corporate financial structures?" "I feel qualified to spot patterns and inconsistencies in data," Clara replied evenly. "The principles are the same regardless of the field." "I'm sure they are." Vincent's tone suggested he thought otherwise. "Well, I look forward to seeing what fresh perspective you bring to our department." After he left, Clara could feel the tension radiating from Adrian like heat from a fire. "That was him," she said quietly. "The man you suspect." "That was him." Adrian's voice was grim. "And Clara, I need you to be very careful around Vincent. He's charming, he's intelligent, and he's extremely dangerous when he feels threatened." "Did I handle that okay?" "You handled it perfectly. But Clara, after today, he's going to be watching you. He's going to try to figure out exactly what you're looking for and how much I've told you." Clara looked down at Ethan, who had fallen asleep in her arms, oblivious to the undercurrents of danger swirling around him. "Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe I'm not qualified for corporate intrigue." "Clara," Adrian moved his chair closer, his voice urgent. "Look at me." She met his green eyes, seeing determination and something that looked like fear, not for himself, but for her. "You are exactly what this company needs right now. You're smart, you're observant, and you're not connected to any of the existing power structures that Vincent has been manipulating. But more than that," he reached out his fingers, barely brushing her cheek. "You're brave. You've been fighting impossible battles your entire life, and you've never given up. This is just another fight, Clara. And this time you're not fighting alone." The touch of his fingers against her skin sent electricity racing through her entire body. Clara found herself leaning into the contact, drawn to the warmth and strength he offered. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good. Being scared means you understand the stakes." Adrian's thumb traced across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "But Clara, I promise you, I will not let anything happen to you or Ethan." Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I will keep you safe. The intensity in his voice, the fierce protectiveness in his expression made Clara's heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. She was falling for this man, falling hard and fast, and that terrified her almost as much as the corporate conspiracy she was about to investigate. "Adrian," she breathed, and she saw her own desire reflected in his eyes. For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility. Adrian's hand was still cupping her cheek, his thumb still tracing soft patterns on her skin, and Clara felt herself swaying toward him like a magnet pulled to true north. Then Ethan stirred in her arms, making a soft sound, and reality crashed back over them both. Adrian dropped his hand and took a step back, running his fingers through his hair. We should get you home. It's been a long day and you start work tomorrow." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. The moment between them had been brief, but it had changed something fundamental. The awareness was there now, acknowledged, an electric humming beneath every interaction. As they gathered Ethan's things and prepared to leave, Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and frowned. "I need to take this. Sarah, could you please make sure Clara gets to her car safely?" But even as he answered the call, Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his expression darkened as he listened to whoever was on the other end. "We have a problem," she heard him say as they walked toward the elevator. "How big a problem, I see. No, don't do anything until I get there. And Marcus, make sure the servers are backed up. Everything. I want 3 copies of every file." The elevator doors closed on his increasingly urgent conversation, leaving Clara with a growing sense of unease. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough to make Adrian look genuinely worried for the first time since she'd met him. As Sarah helped her navigate the underground garage and showed her to a taxi, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something much larger and more dangerous than she'd realized. Vincent Harmon's calculating gaze kept flashing through her memory, along with the way he'd studied her like a scientist examining a potentially dangerous specimen. The taxi ride back to her apartment gave her too much time to think, to second-guess her decision. She was a single mother with no experience in corporate politics, about to go up against a man who had successfully stolen millions of dollars without getting caught. What made her think she could outsmart someone that clever, that ruthless? But then she remembered Adrian's words. "You're not fighting alone." And she remembered the way he'd held Ethan, the way he'd looked at both of them like they were something precious worth protecting. Back in her dingy apartment, Clara fed Ethan and put him down for the night, then sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop researching everything she could find about Vincent Harmon. What she discovered was both impressive and unsettling. Vincent had an MBA from Wharton, 20 years of experience in corporate finance, and a reputation as one of the most brilliant CFOs in the tech industry. He was married with 2 children, lived in a mansion in Lincoln Park, and was known for his charitable donations and community involvement. On paper, he looked like the perfect executive. But Clara had learned to look beyond the surface to spot the patterns others missed. And as she dug deeper into Vincent's background, she began to notice inconsistencies, gaps in his employment history that didn't quite make sense. Previous companies that had suffered mysterious financial difficulties after his departure, a pattern of moving from firm to firm every few years, always with glowing recommendations, but always leaving behind operations that struggled after his departure. It was nearly midnight when her phone rang. Adrian's name appeared on the screen, and Clara answered immediately. "Clara, I'm sorry to call so late. Is Ethan asleep?" "Yes, he's down for the night. Adrian, what's wrong? You sounded worried when you took that call earlier." There was a long pause before he answered. "Someone accessed our servers tonight, remotely. They got into the financial databases you'll be reviewing tomorrow." Clara's blood went cold. "Vincent, we can't prove it yet, but the timing is suspicious." "Clara, I think he knows. I think he figured out why I really hired you." "What does that mean? What happens now?" "It means we need to move faster than I originally planned." "Clara, how quickly can you review financial data? If I gave you everything tonight, could you start identifying patterns immediately?" She thought about her biochemistry training, about the countless hours she'd spent analyzing complex data sets in graduate school. "If you can get me the files, I can start tonight." "Adrian, what? Aren't you telling me?" Another pause, longer this time. "The phone call I received was from our head of security. Someone's been asking questions about you, Clara. About where you live, whether you have family in the city, whether you have any connection to Cole Technologies. Fear shot through Clara like ice water. Someone's investigating me. It looks that way. Clara, I'm sending a car for you. I want you and Ethan somewhere safe while we figure this out. Adrian, I can't just disappear. I have responsibilities I have. You have a baby who needs his mother to stay alive. Adrian's voice was firm, brooking no argument. Clara, please, let me protect you. Let me make sure nothing happens to either of you. Clara looked around her shabby apartment at the peeling paint and the stained ceiling at the life she'd been barely managing to maintain. Then she thought about Vincent Harmon's cold eyes, about the calculating way he'd studied her, about the kinds of men who stole millions of dollars and destroyed lives to cover their tracks. Where would we go? My place. It's secure, it's safe, and it's the last place anyone would expect to find you. Adrian's voice softened. Clara, I know this is happening fast. I know it's overwhelming, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Clara closed her eyes, thinking about the chain of coincidences that had brought them together. A wrong text message, a desperate plea for help, a billionaire who had somehow known exactly what she needed to hear. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just extraordinary luck. But either way, Adrian Cole had already saved her life once. Yes, she said quietly. I can trust you. Good. Pack whatever you and Ethan need for a few days. The car will be there in 20 minutes. As Clara hurriedly packed a bag, her hands shaking slightly with adrenaline and fear, she realized that her life had just taken another dramatic turn. She'd thought accepting the job was the biggest risk she'd ever taken. But now she was about to put not just her career, but her safety, and Ethan's safety, in the hands of a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane, that she was making decisions too quickly, trusting too easily. But the part of her that had learned to survive on instinct, the part that had kept her and Ethan alive through months of poverty and desperation, told her that Adrian Cole was exactly what he appeared to be, a good man in a bad situation, trying to do the right thing. And as she zipped up the diaper bag and lifted her sleeping son from his crib, Clara made a decision that would change everything. She was going to trust Adrian completely. She was going to help him catch Vincent Harmon. And she was going to stop running from the growing feelings that made her heart race every time he looked at her. 20 minutes later, as she settled into the back seat of a sleek black car with Ethan in her arms, Clara looked back at her apartment building one last time. She had the strangest feeling that she was saying goodbye to more than just a shabby studio apartment. She was saying goodbye to the woman she used to be. The woman who struggled alone, who asked for help only in desperate moments, who believed that good things didn't happen to people like her. Tomorrow she would begin the most important work of her life. But tonight she was going home with Adrian Cole, the man who had somehow managed to save her twice in 2 days. And despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, despite every rational reason to be terrified, Clara had never felt more hopeful about the future. The city lights blurred past the car windows as they drove toward whatever came next, and Clara found herself believing for the first time in years that sometimes fairy tales really did come true. Adrian's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a luxury building on Lakeshore Drive, and Clara's breath caught as the elevator doors opened directly into his living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides of the apartment, offering a panoramic view of Lake Michigan that sparkled like diamonds under the city lights. The interior was a study in understated elegance, warm hardwood floors, comfortable furniture that looked expensive but lived in, and artwork that spoke of personal taste rather than decorator choices. "This is incredible," Clara whispered, shifting Ethan in her arms as she took in the space. The baby was awake and alert, his wide eyes reflecting the twinkling lights of the city below. "It's home," Adrian said simply, taking her overnight bag and setting it down near the entrance. "Are you hungry? I can make something or we can order in." "Adrian, you don't need to cook for me." Clara felt that familiar flutter of being overwhelmed by his generosity. "You've already done so much." "Clara." He turned to face her, his green eyes serious. "You're here because I asked you to trust me with your safety." The least I can do is make sure you're fed." His expression softened as he looked at Ethan. "Both of you." Before Clara could protest further, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. "What is it?" Clara asked, recognizing the same look of concern she'd seen at the office. "Marcus Chen, my head of security, he's downstairs. He has information about who's been asking questions about you." Adrian looked torn between protecting her from bad news and keeping her informed. "Clara, do you want to hear this, or would you rather get Ethan settled first?" "I want to hear it. I need to know what we're dealing with." Adrian nodded and made a quick call. 5 minutes later, a man in his 40s stepped off the elevator, Asian American, with intelligent eyes and the kind of quiet confidence that suggested military or law enforcement background. "Marcus Chen," he said, extending his hand to Clara. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, Ms. Hayes. Please call me Clara, and thank you for looking into this." Marcus pulled out a tablet and settled into one of Adrian's leather chairs. "I ran a comprehensive check after Adrian called me. Someone hired a private investigation firm this afternoon to do a background check on you. They wanted everything: employment history, financial records, family connections, current living situation." Clara's stomach dropped. "Who hired them?" "The request came through a shell company, but I was able to trace it back." Marcus's expression was grim. "It originated from Vincent Harmon's personal attorney." Adrian cursed under his breath. "He's moving faster than I expected." "There's more," Marcus continued. "The PI firm also requested surveillance on your apartment building. They wanted to know your daily routines when you come and go, whether you have any security measures in place." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "They were planning to watch me." "We're planning past tense. The surveillance was supposed to start tomorrow morning." Marcus looked at Adrian. "Moving her tonight was smart. By the time they figure out she's not at her apartment, we'll have had time to put proper security measures in place." Ethan chose that moment to start fussing, and Clara automatically began bouncing him gently, but her hands were shaking, and Adrian noticed immediately. "Clara, sit down. You're safe here. Nothing is going to happen to you or Ethan." "How can you be sure?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "This man has resources connections. He's been stealing millions of dollars for months without getting caught. What makes you think?" "Because..." Adrian interrupted gently, taking Ethan from her arms with practiced ease. "I have resources too. And Clara, I will use every single one of them to protect you." The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent warmth flooding through her chest, even as fear continued to gnaw at her stomach. She watched him settle Ethan against his shoulder, the baby immediately calming at his touch. "Vincent's smart," Marcus said, "but he's also arrogant. He thinks he's always the smartest person in the room, which makes him predictable. Clara, the fact that he's investigating you means you've already rattled him. That's good news." "How is that good news?" Clara demanded. "Because it means he is worried," Adrian explained, his voice low and soothing as he continued to rock Ethan. "Worried people make mistakes, and when Vincent makes mistakes, we'll be ready to catch him." Marcus pulled up another screen on his tablet. "I've been analyzing the financial data Adrian gave me access to. There are definitely irregularities, money flowing through accounts that shouldn't exist, invoices for services that were never rendered, payroll entries for employees who don't exist." "How much money are we talking about?" Clara asked. "Conservatively, 8 to 10 million over the past 18 months. But Clara, the real problem isn't just the theft. It's how he's been covering it up." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Show her." Marcus turned the tablet toward Clara, displaying a complex spreadsheet. "Vincent's been manipulating the company's financial reports to hide the missing money. But to make the numbers work, he's had to create fake revenue streams, phantom contracts, fictional partnerships. The entire financial structure of Cole Technologies is being held together with lies." Clara studied the data, her scientific mind immediately beginning to spot patterns. "This is like a house of cards. If any one of these false entries gets exposed, the whole thing collapses," Adrian finished grimly. "And it won't just destroy Vincent. It'll destroy the company, ruin 800 employees and probably land me in prison for financial fraud I knew nothing about. The weight of what he was asking her to do suddenly hit Clara like a physical blow. This wasn't just about catching a thief. This was about saving a company, protecting innocent people's livelihoods, and clearing Adrian's name. The pressure was enormous. "I don't know if I'm qualified for this," she whispered. "Clara." Adrian moved to sit beside her on the couch, still holding Ethan. "Look at me." She met his green eyes, seeing determination and something that looked like faith. "You are the most qualified person I know for this job. Not because of your degree or your training, though those matter, but because you understand what it means to fight for survival. You know what it's like when everything depends on making the right choice." His voice was soft and tense. "Vincent has been playing games with numbers and hiding behind corporate structures. But Clara, you've been fighting real battles with real consequences your entire life. This is just another battle. And if I fail, if I can't find enough evidence, or if I miss something important, then we'll figure out another way. But Clara, I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to be brilliant." The confidence in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was capable of anything, made Clara's heart race. She was falling for this man, falling hard and fast, and the intensity of her feelings terrified her, almost as much as the corporate conspiracy they were trying to unravel. Marcus cleared his throat diplomatically. "I should probably head out and let you two get some rest. Clara, I'll have a security detail posted discreetly around the building, and I'll be monitoring Vincent's activities. If he makes any moves toward you or your family, we'll know immediately." After Marcus left, Clara found herself alone with Adrian and suddenly hyper-aware of the intimacy of their situation. She was staying in his home, surrounded by his personal belongings, breathing air that smelled like his cologne. Ethan had fallen asleep in Adrian's arms, looking perfectly content and secure. "He really does trust you," Clara said softly, nodding toward her sleeping baby. "Babies are good judges of character," Adrian replied, his voice gentle as he looked down at Ethan. "They can sense when someone means them no harm." "Is that what you mean, me no harm?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications they weren't quite ready to address directly. Adrian's green eyes found hers, and Clara saw desire there, carefully controlled, but unmistakable. "Clara, I would never hurt you. Not intentionally, not ever." He paused, then added more quietly, "But I can't promise that being close to me won't put you in danger. This situation with Vincent, it's going to get worse before it gets better." "I know." Clara reached out her fingers, barely brushing his hand where it rested on Ethan's back. "Adrian, I need you to understand something. I'm not just doing this for the job or the money, or even to help your company. I'm doing this because you asked me to trust you, and for the first time in years, I want to trust someone completely." The admission hung between them like a bridge, fragile and new but strong enough to support the weight of everything they weren't yet saying. "Clara," Adrian's voice was rough with emotion, "I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's not just gratitude or some kind of savior complex. From the moment I heard your voice on the phone last night, something changed in me. Something I didn't even know was missing suddenly felt found." The words sent heat racing through Clara's entire body. She found herself leaning toward him, drawn by the magnetic pull that had been building between them since their first conversation. "This is complicated," she whispered. "Yes, it is. I have a baby. I have responsibilities. I can't afford to make mistakes. I know. And we're about to work together to bring down a dangerous man who's already threatened both of us. We are. So this is probably the worst possible timing for whatever this is." Adrian's smile was soft understanding. "Probably." And then, as if drawn by forces beyond their control, they were kissing. It was gentle at first, tentative, both of them acutely aware of Ethan sleeping peacefully in Adrian's arms. But as Clara's lips parted under his, as her hand found the back of his neck and pulled him closer, the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate and long overdue. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Clara, I want you to know that no matter what happens with Vincent, no matter how this investigation turns out, my feelings for you are separate from all of that. You could decide tomorrow that you want nothing to do with me personally, and I would still protect you and Ethan with everything I have. The sincerity in his voice, the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and rare, made Clara's throat tight with emotion. "What if I don't want to decide that?" she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out. All of it. Together." Ethan stirred in Adrian's arms, making soft baby sounds, and Clara smiled despite the emotional intensity of the moment. "I should put him down for the night. He's going to need a proper feeding soon." "The guest room is already set up for you," Adrian said, standing carefully so as not to wake the baby. "I had my housekeeper bring in a crib and all the supplies you'll need. But Clara, if you need anything at all, I'm just down the hall." The guest room was beautiful and comfortable, with its own attached bathroom and a view of the lake that took Clara's breath away. Someone had indeed set up a high-end crib complete with luxury bedding, and the dresser was stocked with diapers, wipes, and everything else Ethan might need. As Clara fed Ethan and prepared him for bed, she tried to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. She'd gone from desperate single mother to corporate investigator to house guest of one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, she'd started falling in love. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, as she tucked Ethan into his new crib and watched him settle into peaceful sleep, Clara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, hope for a future that included more than just survival. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Adrian holding a mug of tea and wearing an expression of careful concern. "I thought you might want something warm before bed," he said, offering her the mug. "It's chamomile, supposed to help with stress." "Thank you." Their fingers brushed as she took the mug, and Clara felt that familiar electric jolt. "Adrian, about what happened earlier." "We don't have to talk about it tonight if you're not ready," he said gently. "Clara, there's no pressure here, no expectations. I want you to feel safe and comfortable, and if that means we take things slowly, then that's what we'll do." The thoughtfulness behind his words, the way he put her comfort above his own desires, made Clara's heart clench with affection. "I do feel safe," she said quietly. "For the first time in months, I feel completely safe. And Adrian, I'm ready to talk about it. About us. About what this could be." His smile was soft, hopeful. "Would you like to sit outside? The balcony has a beautiful view and it's private." The balcony was indeed stunning, with comfortable seating and a view of the lake that stretched to the horizon. The city lights twinkled below them like fallen stars, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of water and possibility. "This is where you were standing last night," Clara said, settling into one of the cushioned chairs. When you were thinking about giving up." "Yes." Adrian sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. "I stood right here and wondered if anything I'd built actually mattered, if losing it all would really make any difference in the world. And now I know that some things are worth fighting for, some people are worth protecting." He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Clara, I want to tell you something, and I need you to listen to the whole thing before you respond." She nodded, suddenly nervous. "I've been successful in business because I'm good at reading people, at understanding what motivates them, what they need. But Clara, what I feel for you, it's not strategic, it's not calculated. It's the most irrational, overwhelming thing I've ever experienced." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I know this is fast. I know it doesn't make logical sense. But I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit Clara like a physical force, stealing her breath and making her heart race. Part of her wanted to tell him it was too soon, too complicated, too risky. But a larger part of her recognized the truth in his confession because she felt it too. "Adrian," she said softly, "I need you to know something about me, about why this scares me so much. Tell me." Clara took a shaky breath, gathering courage to share the truth she'd barely admitted to herself. "When David left, when he decided that being a father was too much work, I promised myself I would never again put my heart in the hands of someone who might walk away. I promised myself that Ethan and I would be fine on our own, that we didn't need anyone else. And you've kept that promise. You've been incredibly strong. But Adrian, what terrifies me is how much I want to break that promise for you. How much I want to trust you with everything, my heart, my future, Ethan's future. And if I'm wrong about you, if you decide this is too complicated or too much responsibility... Clara. Adrian reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady. Look at me. She met his green eyes, seeing determination and something that looked like love. I am not David. I am not going to run when things get difficult. I am not going to decide that loving you and Ethan is too much work. His voice was fierce, absolute. Clara, I have built a multi-billion-dollar company from nothing. I have survived corporate takeovers, economic downturns, and the kind of pressure that breaks most people. Do you really think I'm going to be scared off by a diaper bag and a few sleepless nights? Despite everything, Clara found herself smiling. When you put it like that, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not just falling in love with you, Clara. I'm falling in love with the life we could build together, all of it. The messy, complicated, wonderful reality of loving someone who comes with responsibilities and history and a baby who needs both of us. The sincerity in his voice, the way he talked about Ethan like he was already part of their future, made Clara's eyes fill with tears. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Good, Adrian said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to her palm. Being terrified means it matters. It means we both understand what we have to lose. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, watching the lights of the city twinkle below them. Clara felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness she hadn't experienced in years. Adrian, she said eventually, tomorrow when we start investigating Vincent, what if we find something that destroys everything? What if the evidence leads somewhere you don't want it to go? Then we'll deal with whatever we find, together. His grip on her hand tightened. Clara, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me that no matter what we discover, no matter how bad it gets, you won't try to handle it alone. Promise me you'll trust me enough to let me help. Clara thought about all the times she'd faced impossible situations by herself, all the nights she'd lain awake trying to solve problems that felt insurmountable. The idea of having a partner, someone who would stand beside her instead of walking away, felt almost too good to be true. I promise, she said quietly. But Adrian, you have to promise me something too. Anything. Promise me that if this investigation puts Ethan in real danger, you'll help me get him somewhere safe, even if it means I have to walk away from the job. Even if it means walking away from this. She gestured between them. His safety comes first. Always. Clara, I would never ask you to choose between protecting Ethan and anything else. Never. Adrian's voice was gentle but absolute. But I also don't think it's going to come to that. We're going to catch Vincent. We're going to make him pay for what he's done, and we're going to do it in a way that keeps all of us safe. The confidence in his voice was reassuring, but Clara had learned not to take safety for granted. Still sitting here with Adrian feeling the strength of his hand in hers, she found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, they could have it all. Her phone buzzed with a text message and Clara glanced at it automatically. Her blood went cold when she saw the number. It was Vincent Harmon. Ms. Hayes, I hope you're settling in well to your new position. I look forward to working closely with you. Perhaps we could have lunch tomorrow to discuss your role in more detail. I know some excellent restaurants where we could have a private conversation. Adrian was reading over her shoulder and she felt his entire body tense. He knows, Clara whispered. He knows I'm not at my apartment. He knows where I am. That's impossible. Only 3 people knew you were coming here tonight. Me, Marcus, and my driver, who's been with me for 5 years. Clara's mind raced, applying the same analytical thinking she'd used in laboratory research. Adrian, what if he's not tracking me? What if he's tracking you? The implication hit them both at the same time. If Vincent had been monitoring Adrian's communications, his movements, his activities, then he would know about Clara's visit to the office, about the contract signing, about everything. "We need to call Marcus," Adrian said, already reaching for his phone. "And Clara, we need to respond to Vincent's message in a way that doesn't let him know we're on to him." "What should I say?" Adrian thought for a moment. "Something professional but non-committal. Make him think you're just another employee who's focused on doing her job." Clara typed carefully. "Mr. Harmon, thank you for reaching out. I'm excited to begin working with the financial team. Perhaps we could schedule something for next week once I've had a chance to familiarize myself with the company's procedures." "Perfect," Adrian said as she hit send. "Professional, polite, but not eager. It buys us time." Marcus answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" Vincent just texted Clara suggesting a private lunch meeting. "Marcus, I think he's been monitoring my communications." "I'll be right up. Don't discuss anything else over the phone." While they waited for Marcus, Clara found herself studying Adrian's profile as he stared out at the city lights. The strong jaw, the intelligent green eyes, the way he held himself with confidence, even when facing an impossible situation. This man had risked everything to help her, had opened his home and his heart to a stranger and her baby. "Adrian," she said softly, "whatever happens tomorrow, whatever Vincent tries to do, I want you to know that meeting you has changed everything for me. Not just the job or the money, but everything." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his expression made her breath catch. "Clara, meeting you saved my life in ways you'll never understand. And I promise you, no matter what Vincent throws at us, no matter how dirty this fight gets, we're going to come out the other side stronger than ever." As if summoned by their conversation, they heard Ethan stirring in the guest room, making the soft sounds that meant he was waking up and would soon need attention. "I should check on him," Clara said, starting to stand. "We should check on him," Adrian corrected, gently taking her hand. "Clara, you don't have to do everything alone anymore. Let me help." Together they walked back into the apartment toward the guest room where Ethan was beginning to fuss. And as Clara watched Adrian lift her baby with gentle, confident hands, she realized that somewhere in the space of 24 hours, they had stopped being strangers who'd found each other by accident. They had become a family. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as Adrian settled Ethan against his shoulder and the baby immediately calmed, Clara felt something she'd almost forgotten existed, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Tomorrow, they would begin the most dangerous investigation of their lives. Tonight, they were safe together and falling in love, despite every rational reason to be cautious. And for the first time since David had walked out, Clara allowed herself to believe that some fairy tales really did come true. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later with a team of 3 specialists and equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. Clara watched from Adrian's couch, holding a now alert Ethan as they swept the penthouse for surveillance devices. "Clean," Marcus announced after an hour of methodical searching. "But Adrian, your phone has definitely been compromised, and possibly your office computer." "How long?" Adrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Based on the sophistication of the malware, I'd say at least 6 months. Vincent's been watching everything, your emails, your calls, your calendar, your financial transactions." Clara felt sick. "Then he knows about the money you sent me. He knows about everything." "Which means he's been planning this confrontation from the moment he realized you posed a threat," Marcus said grimly. "The question is, what's his end game?" Adrian was pacing now, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. He can't just discredit Clara without raising suspicions about why he's so concerned about a new employee, and he can't eliminate the evidence without exposing himself. "Unless," Clara said quietly, the pieces suddenly clicking together in her analytical mind, "he's not planning to hide the evidence. What if he's planning to pin everything on you?" The silence that followed her words was deafening. "Explain," Marcus said. Clara stood up, her scientific training taking over as she began to see the pattern. "Think about it. Vincent has been stealing for months, but he's also been building a case against Adrian. Every false transaction, every manipulated report, What if they're designed to look like Adrian authorized them? Adrian stopped pacing, his face pale. That's actually brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. If Vincent can make it look like Adrian was embezzling money and using fake reports to cover it up, then Vincent becomes the whistleblower who exposed the corruption. He saves the company, destroys Adrian, and gets away with millions of dollars. Marcus was already pulling up files on his tablet. Clara's right. Look at this. Every major discrepancy I've found has some kind of trail that could be traced back to Adrian's administrative access. The authorizations, the account transfers, even the timing of the suspicious transactions, they all align with Adrian's known schedule. How do we prove it is not true? Clara asked. We can't, Adrian said flatly. Not with traditional evidence. Vincent's been too careful, too thorough. Any digital forensics will show my access codes, my authorization patterns. Then we need to catch him in the act, Clara said. We need to force him to make a mistake that exposes his real intentions. That's incredibly dangerous, Marcus warned. Clara, if Vincent realizes you're deliberately trying to trap him, there's no telling how he might react. He's already dangerous, Clara pointed out. He's already investigating me, threatening me, trying to manipulate the situation. The question is whether we let him control the narrative or whether we take control ourselves. Adrian was looking at her with an expression of admiration mixed with concern. Clara, what are you thinking? She adjusted Ethan in her arms, the baby's presence grounding her as her mind worked through the possibilities. I'm thinking we give Vincent exactly what he wants. We let him believe he's successfully isolated me from you, that he's convinced me you're the real criminal. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately. Clara, I won't let you put yourself in that kind of danger. Adrian, listen to me. Vincent wants to meet with me privately, right? He wants to have a conversation where he can control the narrative, plant seeds of doubt about you, maybe even try to recruit me as an ally or witness against you. Which is exactly why it's too dangerous. No, Clara said firmly. It's exactly why it might work. If I meet with Vincent wearing a wire, if I let him believe he's successfully turning me against you, he might reveal information about how he's been manipulating the evidence. He might even admit to the theft. Marcus was nodding slowly. It could work. Vincent's arrogant enough to think he can manipulate Clara, especially if he believes she has reason to distrust Adrian. Oh, what reason? Adrian demanded. Clara took a deep breath, hating what she was about to suggest, but knowing it was their best chance. The reason every gold digger has for distrusting a billionaire: money. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian's expression went carefully blank. You want him to think you're only interested in me for financial security, he said quietly. I want him to think I'm exactly the kind of person who would sell out her boss for the right price, Clara corrected. Vincent understands greed, manipulation, self-interest. If I can convince him that I'm motivated by money rather than justice, he might trust me enough to incriminate himself. Clara, Adrian's voice was strained. Do you understand what you're suggesting? You'd have to convince Vincent that everything between us has been about money. You'd have to make him believe that you're willing to betray me. Yes. And you're comfortable with that? Clara looked down at Ethan, who was watching the adults with wide, curious eyes. She thought about the life she wanted to build for her son, about the kind of world she wanted him to grow up in. A world where good people fought back against corruption, where justice mattered more than personal comfort. Adrian, 6 months ago, I was choosing between buying groceries and paying rent. 3 days ago, I was texting strangers at 3 a.m. begging for baby formula money. Do you really think I'm going to be scared of pretending to be a gold digger if it means stopping a man who's stolen millions of dollars and tried to frame the person I love? The last words slipped out before she could stop them, and Clara felt her cheeks burn. But Adrian's expression softened, and he crossed the room to stand in front of her. The person you love, he asked gently. Yes, she said quietly. The person I love, which is exactly why I need to do this. Because if we don't stop Vincent, he's going to destroy you, and I can't let that happen. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, his thumb tracing across her cheekbone. Clara, I love you too, which is exactly why I can't let you walk into a room with a dangerous man and pretend to betray me. You're not letting me do anything, Clara said firmly. I'm choosing to do this because I'm not the helpless single mother you rescued anymore, Adrian. I'm a woman who's capable of fighting for what matters to her. Marcus cleared his throat diplomatically. If we're going to do this, we need to plan it carefully. Clara would need to be wired for both audio and video, and we'd need backup positioned where they could intervene if things go wrong. When and where? Adrian asked, though his expression made it clear he still hated the idea. Vincent suggested lunch tomorrow, somewhere private where we could talk. Clara was already thinking through the logistics. I could suggest a restaurant somewhere public enough to be safe, but private enough for him to feel comfortable saying things he shouldn't. The signature room, Marcus suggested. Upscale, discreet, and we have contacts there who could help with positioning backup and recording equipment. Clara nodded. I'll text Vincent back tonight, suggest we meet there at noon. I'll tell him I've been thinking about his offer, and I have some concerns about my new position that I'd like to discuss privately. What kind of concerns? Adrian asked. The kind that suggest I'm starting to have doubts about whether my new boss is as trustworthy as he initially seemed, Clara said carefully. The kind that make me seem like I might be open to alternative arrangements. The plan took shape over the next 2 hours. Clara would meet Vincent at the signature room wearing concealed recording equipment provided by Marcus's team. She would let Vincent believe that she was having second thoughts about Adrian, that she was worried about her job security and her financial future. Most importantly, she would give Vincent the opportunity to position himself as her protector, an ally, hopefully leading him to reveal information about his real plans. The key, Marcus explained, is to let Vincent think he's seducing you to his side. Don't ask direct questions about the embezzlement. Let him bring it up. Let him be the one to suggest that Adrian might not be trustworthy. And if he doesn't take the bait, Clara asked, then we try something else. But Clara, if at any point you feel unsafe, if Vincent says or does anything that makes you uncomfortable, you use the panic signal and we extract you immediately. After Marcus and his team left, Clara found herself alone with Adrian again. Ethan had fallen asleep in his car seat, and the penthouse felt quiet and intimate despite the weight of what they were planning. Are you sure about this? Adrian asked for the 10th time. I'm sure. Clara settled onto the couch beside him. Adrian, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about catching Vincent or saving your company. This is about proving to myself that I'm strong enough to fight for what I believe in. Clara, you've already proven that. You've been fighting impossible battles your entire life. I've been surviving, Clara corrected. There's a difference between surviving and fighting back. Tomorrow, for the first time in my life, I'm going to fight back. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes studying her face. You're remarkable, he said finally. Do you know that I'm terrified, Clara admitted. But I'm also excited. Is that weird? Not weird. It means you're ready. Adrian reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. Clara, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you've already changed everything for me. Not just my business or my situation with Vincent, but everything that matters. What do you mean? I mean that 3 days ago, I was standing on that balcony, wondering if anything I'd built was worth saving. And now I know that it is because it brought me to you, because it gave me something real to fight for. The words sent warmth flooding through Clara's chest. She turned to face him fully, seeing her own feelings reflected in his expression. Adrian, can I ask you something? Anything. After tomorrow, after we catch Vincent, and this is all over. What happens then, between us, I mean? Adrian's smile was soft, hopeful. Then we figure out how to build a life together. All three of us. You really want that, even knowing how complicated it might be. Clara, I want to wake up every morning knowing that you and Ethan are safe and happy. I want to help him with his homework when he's older, teach him to drive, walk you down the aisle someday if you'll have me. Adrian's voice was gentle but certain. I want the whole messy, wonderful, complicated life that comes with loving you both. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. That sounds perfect. Then that's what we'll have, after tomorrow. They went to bed separately that night, both understanding that they needed to stay focused on the plan. But as Clara lay in the guest room listening to Ethan's peaceful breathing, she allowed herself to imagine the future Adrian had described. A real home, a real family, a life built on love rather than survival. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and Clara woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She dressed carefully for her meeting with Vincent, professional but approachable, successful but not too polished. The kind of woman who might be impressed by wealth and power, who might be swayed by the right offer. Marcus arrived early to fit her with recording equipment so sophisticated it was completely undetectable. A tiny camera, disguised as a button on her blazer audio equipment, woven into the fabric itself, and a panic button designed to look like an ordinary piece of jewelry. "Remember?" Marcus said as he made final adjustments. "Let Vincent lead the conversation. Your job is to seem interested but uncertain, like you're looking for someone to tell you what's really going on. And if he gets suspicious, then you play the confused, overwhelmed single mother who's in over her head, which honestly isn't that far from the truth." Adrian was quieter than usual as they prepared to leave, and Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set with worry. "I'll be fine," she said quietly, touching his arm. "We've planned this carefully. Nothing is going to happen to me." "Clara," he turned to face her, his green eyes intense. "Promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that if Vincent offers you a way out, money protection, whatever, you won't even consider it. Promise me you'll remember that we're doing this to catch him, not to make a deal with him." The request stung a little until Clara realized what was really behind it. Adrian was scared, not just for her safety, but that Vincent might actually succeed in turning her against him. "Adrian," she said gently, "do you really think there's any amount of money Vincent could offer that would make me walk away from you? I think Vincent is very good at finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. Then it's a good thing my weakness isn't money." Clara stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. "My weakness is a certain billionaire CEO who spent all night on the phone with a stranger talking her through the worst night of her life. Vincent can't compete with that." The signature room was exactly as Marcus had described, upscale and discreet, with panoramic views of the city and enough ambient noise to provide privacy for conversation. Clara arrived precisely on time and was shown to a corner table where Vincent was already waiting. He stood as she approached, and Clara was struck again by how normal he seemed. Well-dressed, professionally groomed, with the kind of smile that probably put business partners at ease. If she didn't know what she knew, she might have found him charming. "Clara, thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Vincent said, pulling out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering wine. I thought we might both need something to help us relax." "That's very thoughtful," Clara replied, settling into her seat and trying to project exactly the right amount of nervous gratitude. "I have to say I'm glad you reached out," Vincent continued, signaling the waiter. "I had the distinct impression yesterday that you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by your new position." "I am, honestly." Clara let some genuine uncertainty creep into her voice. "Everything happened so quickly. One day I'm struggling to make ends meet, and the next day I'm being offered a job that seems almost too good to be true." "Ah," Vincent's expression grew sympathetic understanding. "And you're wondering what the catch is." "Exactly." Clara took a sip of wine, noting that it was expensive. Very expensive. "Mr. Harmon, please call me Vincent." "Vincent, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Is there something about this job, about Cole Technologies, that I should know? Something that might explain why Adrian was so eager to hire someone with my limited experience?" Vincent's smile was patient, almost paternal. "Clara, may I be frank with you? Please. Adrian Cole is a brilliant entrepreneur, but he's also young and sometimes impulsive, especially when it comes to attractive women in distressing circumstances." The words hit exactly the way they were intended, to like a slap of cold reality. Clara let herself react as if Vincent had voiced her own secret fears. "You think he hired me because he felt sorry for me?" "I think Adrian saw a beautiful woman in trouble and wanted to play the hero," Vincent said gently. "It's not uncommon for successful men to conflate business decisions with personal feelings, especially when those feelings involve rescue fantasies." Clara felt a flush of genuine anger at the way Vincent was twisting Adrian's kindness into something calculated and demeaning. But she channeled that anger into her performance, letting it come across as hurt and embarrassment. "So you're saying my qualifications had nothing to do with it?" "I'm saying that Adrian's motivations might be more complicated than they appear." Vincent leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "Clara, I've been with this company for 4 years. I've seen Adrian make impulsive decisions before, and I've had to clean up the consequences. I'm concerned that you might become another one of those consequences." "What do you mean?" Vincent glanced around the restaurant, then lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Clara, there are some irregularities in our financial records that have me very concerned. Irregularities that seem to coincide with some of Adrian's more questionable decisions." "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that could destroy this company if they came to light. The kind that could land people in prison." Vincent's voice was heavy with implication. "Clara, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve to know what you're walking into. I believe Adrian has been using company funds for personal expenses, significant amounts of money." Clara let her eyes widen in shock. That's embezzlement." "I'm afraid so. And Clara, as the new financial analyst, you're going to be the one reviewing those records. You're going to be the one who discovers the discrepancies." "But why would Adrian hire someone to investigate his own crimes?" Vincent's smile was sad, disappointed. "Because he thinks he can control the narrative. He thinks that by hiring someone he's personally involved with someone who owes him for her job and her financial security, he can ensure that the investigation comes to the conclusions he wants." The accusation hung in the air between them, and Clara felt a mixture of rage and admiration for how skillfully Vincent was weaving his lies. He was taking every generous gesture Adrian had made and twisting it into evidence of manipulation. "Vincent, that's a serious accusation." "I know. And Clara, I want you to understand that I'm not telling you this to hurt Adrian or to damage the company. I'm telling you because I think you have a right to know what you're being asked to participate in." "Participate in?" Think about it, Clara. You review the financial records, you find irregularities, but instead of reporting them to the authorities, you help Adrian cover them up. Or maybe you find a way to make the evidence disappear entirely. Either way, you become complicit in the crime. Clara let herself look appropriately horrified. I couldn't do something like that." "Of course not. You're an honest person, Clara, which is exactly why I'm worried about you." Vincent reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "I think Adrian is counting on your gratitude and your personal feelings to cloud your professional judgment. And if that doesn't work, he has other ways to ensure your cooperation. Your financial dependence on him, for instance. Your need for this job to support your son." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Vincent was suggesting that Adrian would use her vulnerability as a weapon against her, would hold her poverty and desperation over her head to force her cooperation. "What are you suggesting I do?" Clara asked quietly. "I'm suggesting that you have options," Vincent said. "Clara, you're obviously intelligent, capable, and principled. You don't have to let yourself be used by someone who sees you as a convenient tool." "What kind of options?" Vincent glanced around again, then leaned even closer. "There are people, regulatory agencies, law enforcement, who would be very interested in the information you're going to uncover. People who could protect you from any retaliation, who could ensure that your cooperation is rewarded rather than punished. You're talking about turning Adrian in. I'm talking about doing the right thing, about protecting yourself and your son from the consequences of someone else's criminal behavior." Vincent's voice was earnest, persuasive. "Clara, if this comes out, and it will come out eventually, do you want to be seen as Adrian's victim or his accomplice?" Clara let herself consider the question as if she'd never thought about it before. I don't know. This is all happening so fast." "I understand. And Clara, I want you to know that you wouldn't be alone in this. I've been documenting the irregularities for months, building a case. If you decided to come forward, I would be there to support you to corroborate your findings." Why would you do that? Adrian is your boss. Because Adrian has been my friend for 4 years, and I can't stand by and watch him destroy himself and take innocent people down with him. Vincent's expression was the picture of reluctant duty. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for someone is stop them from making choices that will ruin their life. It was a masterful performance, Clara had to admit. Vincent was positioning himself as the reluctant whistleblower, the loyal friend forced to act by conscience and concern. If she didn't know the truth, she might have been convinced by his apparent sincerity. Vincent, can I ask you something? Of course. If Adrian is really stealing money, if he's really planning to use me to cover it up, then why are you warning me? Why not just let me discover it on my own? Vincent's smile was gentle, paternal. Because, Clara, I've seen what Adrian can do to people who threaten him. I've seen how he can manipulate situations, how he can make problems disappear. I don't want you to become one of those problems. The implication sent a chill down Clara's spine, even though she knew it was a lie. Vincent was essentially threatening her while making it sound like concern. What do you mean, make problems disappear? I mean that Adrian has resources most people can't imagine. Money, connections, influence. If he decided you were a threat to him, there are any number of ways he could make your life very difficult. Your job, your reputation, your custody of your son. All of it could be at risk. Now Vincent was being direct about the threat, and Clara felt her anger spike. He was threatening Ethan now, using her love for her son as a weapon. Are you saying Adrian would try to take my baby away from me? I'm saying that desperate people do desperate things. And Clara, if Adrian is really guilty of what I think he's guilty of, he's going to become very desperate very soon. Clara took a shaky breath, channeling her genuine fear for Ethan into her performance. I don't know what to do. I need this job, Vincent. I need the money. But if what you're saying is true, Clara, listen to me. You don't have to choose between doing the right thing and protecting your financial security. The authorities have programs protections for whistleblowers. And beyond that, Vincent paused dramatically. I might be able to offer you an alternative. What kind of alternative? A position with my own consulting firm, independent of Cole Technologies, but with similar responsibilities and compensation. You could leave Cole Technologies before any of this comes to light, before you become entangled in Adrian's legal problems. There it was, the bribe. Vincent was offering her a way out, a new job that would remove her from the investigation while keeping her financially secure. It was actually a smart move, Clara realized. If she took the job, Vincent would eliminate the threat she posed while making himself look generous and protective. That's an incredible offer, Clara said, letting hope creep into her voice. But Vincent, I just started at Cole Technologies yesterday. Wouldn't leaving so quickly look suspicious? Not if you discovered something that made you uncomfortable, something that made you question the ethical standards of the company. Vincent's smile was encouraging. Clara, you could say that during your initial review of the financial records, you found discrepancies that concerned you. You could say that when you brought these concerns to Adrian, he asked you to ignore them or minimize them in your reports. Would that be believable? It would be the truth, just presented a bit differently. Because, Clara, I guarantee you that when you start reviewing those financial records, you are going to find discrepancies. And I guarantee you that Adrian is going to ask you to handle them in a way that protects him rather than the company. Vincent was painting Adrian's inevitable request for discretion and careful analysis as evidence of guilt. It was brilliant, Clara had to admit. He was setting up a scenario where any normal business practice could be twisted into evidence of conspiracy. I need to think about this, Clara said finally. It's a big decision. Of course. Take all the time you need. Vincent signaled for the check. But Clara, don't take too long. Once you start reviewing those financial records officially, once you're formally part of the investigation, it becomes much harder to extract yourself cleanly. What do you mean? I mean that knowledge brings responsibility, and responsibility brings liability. Vincent's voice was gentle but firm. Right now, you're innocent. You haven't seen anything, you haven't been asked to participate in anything questionable. But once you start working with those files, once Adrian starts asking you to make certain accommodations, that innocence becomes much harder to maintain. The threat was clear. Take Vincent's offer now, or risk being dragged down with Adrian when the whole thing collapsed. How long do I have to decide? Well, you're supposed to start your formal review tomorrow, aren't you? Vincent smiled sympathetically. Clara, I'd hate to see you walk into that office and get handed a stack of files that could destroy your life. Maybe it would be better to make a clean break before that happens. You're asking me to quit my job today. I'm asking you to protect yourself and your son. Clara, sometimes the brave thing to do is walk away before it's too late. As Vincent paid the check and prepared to leave, Clara felt a mixture of triumph and revulsion. He had revealed exactly what she'd hoped he would. His plan to frame Adrian, his willingness to bribe and threaten to get his way, and his timeline for action. Everything had been recorded, every word captured on the sophisticated equipment Marcus had provided. Vincent, she said as they stood to leave. Thank you for being honest with me, for looking out for me when you didn't have to. It's what friends do, Clara, and I hope we can be friends regardless of what you decide. I hope so too. As they parted ways outside the restaurant, Vincent gave her a final encouraging smile. Clara, remember, you have options. You don't have to be a victim of someone else's poor choices. Clara waited until Vincent's car disappeared into traffic before pulling out her phone and calling Marcus. We got everything, she said without preamble. Every word, every threat, every attempt at bribery. Marcus, he incriminated himself completely. Outstanding. Where are you now? Still outside the restaurant. Marcus, we need to move fast. Vincent wants me to quit my job today before I start reviewing the financial records tomorrow. He's planning to accelerate whatever endgame he has in mind. We're already mobilizing. Clara, there's a car coming to pick you up. We're going to need you to make a few more calls this afternoon, this time to the authorities. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Clara found herself in a downtown FBI office, recounting her conversation with Vincent to federal agents who specialized in corporate fraud. The recording equipment had captured everything perfectly, and the agents seemed particularly interested in Vincent's threats against Ethan. Ms. Hayes, Agent Sarah Martinez, said, after reviewing the recordings, "This is excellent work. Mr. Harmon essentially confessed to embezzlement, conspiracy, and intimidation of a witness. Combined with the financial evidence your team has already compiled, we have more than enough for an arrest warrant." "When will you move against him?" Clara asked. "Tonight. We'll coordinate with local law enforcement to arrest Mr. Harmon at his home. We'll also be executing search warrants for his office and personal computers." Agent Martinez smiled grimly. "Ms. Hayes, your courage has helped us catch a very dangerous man." By the time Clara made it back to Adrian's penthouse, it was nearly 8 o'clock, and she was emotionally exhausted. She found Adrian pacing the living room, while Ethan played happily in his bouncy seat, babbling at his toys. "Clara," Adrian said the moment she walked in, pulling her into his arms. "Thank God you're okay. How did it go?" "It worked. Vincent confessed to everything, the embezzlement, the plan to frame you, everything. The FBI is arresting him tonight." Adrian's relief was so profound that Clara felt his knees buckle slightly. He held her tighter, his face buried in her hair. "It's over," he breathed. "It's really over." "It's over," Clara confirmed, leaning into his warmth and strength. "Adrian, you're safe. The company is safe. Everything Vincent tried to do has been exposed." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other and processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Then Ethan made a particularly adorable gurgling sound, and they both looked over at him, still playing contentedly in his seat. "He has no idea his mama just saved the day," Adrian said softly. "His mama had help," Clara corrected. "A lot of help." "Clara." Adrian pulled back to look at her, his green eyes serious. "What you did today, the risk you took, I need you to know that it was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." "I need you to know that it was the easiest decision I've ever made," Clara replied, "because I was fighting for my family." The word hung in the air between them, family. Not just Clara and Ethan, but all three of them together. "Is that what we are?" Adrian asked quietly. "A family. I think we've been a family since the moment you stayed on the phone with me while I fed Ethan in the middle of the night," Clara said. I think we've been a family since you held my baby like he was the most precious thing in the world. I think we've been a family since you looked at me and saw someone worth saving. Clara. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. I love you. Both of you. More than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too, Clara whispered. And Adrian, I'm ready to stop being scared of that. He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. And as Ethan giggled happily in the background, Clara realized that the fairy tale she'd never dared to believe in was actually coming true. 3 months later, Clara stood in the master bedroom of their new home, a beautiful house in Lincoln Park, with a yard where Ethan could play and space for the family they both hoped to grow. She was getting ready for the Cole Technologies annual charity gala, the first public event they would attend as a couple. Adrian appeared in the doorway wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and Clara's breath caught as it did every time she saw him. You look incredible, he said, crossing the room to wrap his arms around her from behind. Thank you. How's our boy? Mrs. Chen has him completely spoiled already. I think she likes babysitting him more than she likes being our housekeeper. Clara leaned back against Adrian's chest, watching their reflection in the mirror. She was wearing a midnight blue gown that made her feel like a princess, her hair styled in an elegant updo that Adrian had insisted on paying for. But more than the dress or the jewelry or the expensive shoes, what made her feel beautiful was the way Adrian looked at her like she was the most remarkable woman in the world. Adrian, can I tell you something? Always. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That we're real. What do you mean? Clara turned in his arms, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. I mean that a year ago I was a struggling single mother who couldn't afford baby formula. And now I'm getting ready to attend a charity gala with the man I love in a house we own, together with a baby who has everything he could possibly need. And you think it's too good to be true? I think it's exactly as good as it should be, Clara said firmly. I think we both fought for this, earned this, deserved this. But Adrian, sometimes I look at you and I still can't believe you chose us. Clara. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, his expression tender. I didn't choose you. We found each other. In the middle of the worst night of both our lives, we found each other. And everything that's happened since then has just been us choosing to build something beautiful together. Even when it was complicated. Especially when it was complicated. Clara smiled, thinking about everything they'd weathered together. Vincent's arrest and trial, the media attention that followed the months of testimony and legal proceedings. Through it all, Adrian had been her constant support, her partner in every sense of the word. And slowly, day by day, Clara had learned to trust not just Adrian, but herself, her judgment, her strength, her worthiness of love and happiness. Mrs. Cole, Adrian said softly, and Clara's heart skipped a beat the way it did every time he used her new name. They'd gotten married 2 weeks ago in a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family, with Ethan as the most adorable ring-bearer in history. Mr. Cole, she replied, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. Are you ready to go show Chicago society how extraordinary you are? I'm ready to go show Chicago society how extraordinary we are, Clara corrected. As they made their way downstairs to where their car was waiting, Clara caught sight of Ethan in Mrs. Chen's arms. He was 10 months old now, crawling everywhere and babbling constantly with Adrian's green eyes and Clara's stubborn determination. When he saw his parents all dressed up, he clapped his hands and squealed with delight. Mama Dada, he said clearly, and Clara felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might burst. Did you hear that? Adrian asked, his voice thick with emotion. He called me Dada. He knows who his family is, Clara said softly. At the gala, Clara found herself surrounded by Chicago's elite business leaders, politicians, socialites, who had once existed in a world completely separate from hers. But instead of feeling intimidated or out of place, she felt proud. Proud of the work she'd done to help rebuild Cole Technologies' financial integrity. Proud of the charitable foundation she and Adrian had started to help single mothers in crisis. Proud of the life they'd built together. Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian said, as he took the podium to address the crowd, tonight we're celebrating the incredible work of the Cole Foundation, which has provided emergency assistance to over 300 families in the past 6 months. But before we talk about the future, I want to tell you a story about how this foundation began. Clara felt her cheeks warm as Adrian's gaze found hers across the crowded ballroom. 11 months ago, I received a text message that changed my life. It was from a woman I'd never met asking for help feeding her baby. That message, sent to my phone by accident, reminded me that behind every crisis is a person deserving of dignity, hope, and support. That woman, my wife Clara, taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply answer when someone calls for help. The applause was thunderous, but Clara barely heard it. She was too busy watching Adrian, remembering that first desperate night when she'd texted a stranger begging for baby formula money. She thought about how far they'd both come, how much they'd both grown, how love had transformed what started as a cry for help into something beautiful and lasting. The Cole Foundation exists because we believe that everyone deserves a chance at a better life, Adrian continued. Everyone deserves to know that they're not alone, that help is available, that their struggles matter to someone. Tonight, we're not just raising money for charity. We're building a community of people committed to answering when someone calls for help. As the evening wound down and they made their way home, Clara found herself thinking about all the single mothers who were struggling tonight the way she had struggled a year ago. Tomorrow, some of them would receive help from the foundation she and Adrian had built. Some of them would get the second chance she'd been given. "Penny for your thoughts," Adrian said as they drove through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. "I was thinking about second chances," Clara said, "about how a wrong text message can change everything." "Do you really think it was wrong?" Adrian asked. "The text message, I mean." Clara considered the question seriously. "No, I think it was exactly right. I think the universe conspired to put us exactly where we needed to be, exactly when we needed to be there. Even though it was terrifying. Especially because it was terrifying. The best things in life usually are." When they got home, Mrs. Chen had already left and Ethan was sleeping peacefully in his crib. Clara changed out of her gown and into comfortable pajamas, then joined Adrian on the balcony that overlooked their garden. The same balcony where he'd stood contemplating giving up the night before her text message had changed everything. "Adrian," she said, settling into his arms as they looked out at the city lights. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't texted you that night?" "Every day," he admitted. "And Clara, I don't think I would have made it through the next week, let alone the next year. You saved my life in ways you'll never fully understand." "You saved mine too. You saved both our lives." "We saved each other," Adrian said firmly, "and we're going to keep saving each other every day for the rest of our lives." As they sat together in comfortable silence, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with desperation and a misdialed number, but it had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. Love, partnership, family, purpose. All the things she'd stopped believing were possible for someone like her. "Adrian," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" Clara turned to face him, her expression serious. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them, and Clara watched as shock, joy, and wonder chased across Adrian's features. "Pregnant," he breathed. "Really? Really? About 8 weeks, according to the doctor." Clara smiled at his expression of pure happiness. "I wanted to wait until after the gala to tell you, but Adrian, I can't keep secrets from you anymore. We're going to have another baby." Adrian's response was to kiss her so thoroughly that Clara felt dizzy with love and happiness. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you and Ethan, and this new baby, and the life we're building together." "I love you too," Clara replied. "All of it. Every complicated, wonderful, impossible piece of it." As they made their way inside to check on Ethan and prepare for bed, Clara reflected on how much had changed since that desperate night when she'd texted a stranger for help. She'd gone from a woman who believed she had to survive alone to a woman who knew the power of partnership, from someone who asked for help only in crisis to someone who built foundations to provide help to others. But the most important change was the simplest one she'd learned to believe in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind that required no effort or sacrifice, but the real kind that grew from courage, love, and the willingness to fight for what mattered most. Standing in the doorway of Ethan's room, watching their son sleep peacefully, while Adrian's arm wrapped around her waist, and his hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, Clara knew that their story was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead. There always were, but they would face them together as a family. And somewhere in Chicago, another single mother might be lying awake wondering how she was going to feed her baby tomorrow. When that moment came, Clara and Adrian would be ready to answer, to help to prove that sometimes wrong numbers were actually exactly right. Because that's what love did, it answered, when someone called for help. It showed up in the darkness and said, "You're not alone." It transformed accidents into destiny and strangers into family. It saved lives, one text message at a time.